We are back now with a very special returning guest who joined us a few years ago, and we're happy he can join us again. He is the host of the Just Jets podcast, YouTube channel as well, with a bunch of Jets content on there, along with the podcast episodes. It's Matt O'Leary on there. And also, for any of you Islander fans out there like me, Up the Turnpike is the Owls podcast he's a host of as well. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
We thank you for joining us, and we're excited to get into this Giants-Jets rivalry. We talked about it in our, we do 2 episodes a week. We do the recap and then the preview, and then in our recap episode this past week against the Commanders, we talked about how the biggest rivalry in all of New York sports, while the Buffalo Bills just kind of sit in upstate New York, they're just sitting there like, because I'm sure whoever's team ends up winning this game, all those fans will be like, we're the king of New York when it comes to football. And then the Bills are just up there like, I think you forgot about us, guys. But I guess I kind of want to first ask your Jets fan experience. I don't even know if this is a question. I guess I'm just asking for a summary from your experience this season. You have Aaron Rodgers heading out just a few plays into the first game. And then it's like, oh, shoot, wait, Zach Wilson is going to lead us to the promised land here. He's balling out. Like we might have a playoff-bound team, and Aaron Rodgers is a superhuman. He's going to come back by the wild card game, and we'll be all good. And Super Bowl, here we come. What's going on right now in your head when it comes to this Jets season?
Yeah, it was definitely a major surprise when Aaron Rodgers gets hurt 4 games in, and then you're right back to the Zach Wilson train, which is something that I thought would be over with after 2022. But I think we got to give Zach some credit here. He's played pretty well the last few weeks and is trending in the right direction. But yeah, with this run game and this defense, the Jets are going to be competitive the rest of the way. And you're kind of just hoping that they could end this long playoff drought. It's been a long time now since they've last made the playoffs in 2010. And, I think they have a pretty favorable schedule the rest of the way. So it starts this week against the Giants. You can't overlook the Giants. And, you just got to take care of business and hopefully take it one game at a time.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny now, right? Last season, obviously, the Giants had a kind of surprising year in the fact that they made the playoffs, they won a playoff game. And then obviously this season for us has been rough, I'm sure, as you know. And then the Jets, obviously, coming into the season, the expectations were so high. We're going to make the playoffs, Super Bowl contenders with Aaron Rodgers. And now both teams are really down to earth, after what is it, 6 games, 7 games in now. So it's an interesting dynamic how New York sports kind of just always floats back. There's all this excitement, anticipation, and it always comes back down to reality. But what I would say for the Jets, how do you see them? Because you mentioned the Jets defense, right? The Giants at this moment and Jets kind of are in a similar way, right? The Giants offense really can't get going. The Jets offense really can't get going in some aspects. For us, it's a lot of the offensive line. For you, quite a bit of quarterback play, obviously, a little bit of quarterback play for us too, as we've seen. But how do you anticipate, how do you compare these two offenses when you're looking at them, especially for this game and just going forward?
Yeah, I think both these offenses are pretty similar, actually, in that they're going to rely on their star running back, right? Like the Giants have Saquon Barkley. They brought him back this year, and the offense kind of goes as he goes. And it was kind of obvious to me that they missed him the last few weeks before he made his return. And, I think with the Jets and Breece Hall, they are, a much better team when they get Breece Hall going. And I think, the Giants are more than likely going to be starting Tyrod Taylor, and the Jets are starting their backup quarterback now in Zach Wilson. They're kind of just going to ask them not to lose the game. It's going to be a lot of simple things, a lot of easy reads, and it's not going to be a high-flying offense, but both teams are going to try to establish the run. And pass protect might be tough, too, because you have, on both sides here, the Jets' defensive lines, one of the best, and the Giants' defensive lines really come alive the last 2 weeks, holding their opponent to 7 points and 14 points the last 2 weeks. So I think this game projects to be a defensive battle, and I think it's going to be a tough day for both offenses.
I'm going to stay on the offensive side of the ball, go to the O-line talk now. The Giants, the past, let's just say, at least 10 years have struggled on the offensive line. And this season, it's a lot similar, except with one difference, and that's injuries really keeping them out. It's more like the past few years, it's been just poor offensive lineman play. But this year, the injuries have really struck the Giants hard. I could definitely say that. And Andrew Thomas, especially being that top offensive tackle for the team, not being in the past few weeks. So with that being said, the biggest weakness for the Giants being the offensive line, what Jets defensive lineman do you think could make a big impact on Sunday and kind of break through these backups? If not, we're seeing some third strings this season as well. It's been pretty rough for us Giants fans. So what Jets defensive linemen are going to stand out on Sunday, you think?
Yeah, so the Jets like to rotate their guys heavy, but the guy who's really jumped out ever since he got a bigger role in the last 3 weeks has been Bryce Huff. Just his speed off the edge is really, really impressive. And Jet fans have been asking for the Jets to play him more for years, it feels like, because he was one of the better situational pass rushers in football. And, really for the last few weeks, he's gotten to play closer to 50% of the snaps. And he's taken advantage of that opportunity. His pressure numbers go up each and every week. And, if Andrew Thomas is out, that's a huge deal for that Giants offensive line. I think, he's a stellar left tackle when he's in there, but, no Thomas, no Neal. And, from there, I think, dealing with some backup tackles against someone with that kind of speed coming off the edge, that could be a mismatch.
Yeah, especially if we see someone like Justin Pugh, who's straight off the couch playing left tackle, it's gonna be rough for the Giants, I think. And even if Evan Neal, for example, comes back, right? We've seen his issues dealing with pass rushers who really have a lot of speed, and like you mentioned, Huff is just one of the quickest pass rushers off the edge. And I think another guy that you haven't mentioned, I think he's the obvious name, but Quinn Williams, he's dominant. I think the kind of fun battle, obviously there's this kind of rivalry between him and Dexter Lawrence, between Jets and Giants fans, kind of see who can make a bigger impact in this one. I think it's going to be a fun one. How do you compare those two players when you look at Dexter Lawrence, when you look at Quinnen Williams? I know Giants fans, of course, are going to claim that one's way better than the other. Jets fans are going to have their side. How do you compare the two players, similarities, differences?
Yeah, I think both players are really special. I wish we could live in a world where we both could just enjoy, like, hey, like this guy, yes, he's on the Giants, he's amazing. And this guy, he's on the Jets, he's also really good. They're going to get compared and brought up a lot. It's the same draft class. And, I think both are, one of the better young interior pass rushers in the game. I mean, they both got contract extensions, big contract extensions this offseason, and for good reason. They really impact that defensive line and wreak some havoc from the interior. They both, when you look at the pressure numbers, they're both always going to be towards the top. And, I think they're very similar players. I really do. And I think they're both, probably top five at their position. And, they're both really, really special. And I expect both to have an impact on Sunday as well.
It seems like we're leaning again towards another Tyrod Taylor start, which isn't the worst thing for us, because Daniel Jones, he has been out. Obviously, you don't want to rush him back with the injury, and if he gets injured again and re-aggravates the neck, it's just a problem. And Tyrod Taylor has been pretty good in his starts the past few weeks. I want to ask you now, with his mobile ability, what is Rob Saleh? Maybe more importantly, this is for Jeff Ulbrich. What do you think he's going to dial up? Are we thinking of like a QB spy? How is he going to handle the Tyrod, rushing with Tyrod's passing ability as well?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see this matchup, and I have a lot of respect for Tyrod Taylor. He's someone that the Jets saw a lot in Buffalo, and I think he's a pretty good spot starter and high-end backup quarterback. He could throw the deep ball a little bit, and while Jones is a better runner once he gets going, I like how shifty Tyrod Taylor is, so I think that's going to be tough. I would imagine that they're going to use a spy. They did that in the second half against the Broncos with Russell Wilson. And I would think that either their safety, Tony Adams, is going to do it, or they actually used Bryce Huff to do it, both against the Broncos and the Eagles before the bye week. So I definitely think a spy is necessary and something that's going to come into play in this game. But if you're going to implement the spy, you got to be able to cover, because that's one less guy who's rushing the passer. And hopefully for the Jet side of things, they're getting DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner back, because I think that would make a big difference for their secondary.
Yeah, you mentioned the return of Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. Obviously, we had the preseason game. We saw the little back and forth of Jalen Hyatt and Sauce Gardner. Not that I'm anticipating them being matched up a lot in this one, because Hyatt is more at this point not playing every snap. He is growing in role, obviously, each and every week. But how do you see that dynamic? Obviously, Sauce is a kind of I'll just say he's a dynamic personality. Jalen Hyatt obviously has a bit of personality too. How do you anticipate? What are you looking forward to in that matchup?
Yeah, I think that was the most clipped and complete pass I've ever seen. But it was a nice route. It was, and I like Jalen Hyatt a lot coming out of the draft. I think the Giants got really good value where they took him. With the Jets in particular, with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, they don't have their corners travel with a wide receiver. They each kind of play their own individual side. So it's not necessarily like it's going to be one of those guys matched up against Hyatt or whichever wide receiver for the entirety of the game. But I would think they're going to get some matchups together, and he's got a ton of speed. He separates well. And Sauce Gardner is going to have to keep up with him. He has the length to do it. And, we've seen him, shut down guys in the past. So I think it's going to be a good matchup.
And then just before the bye week, obviously the win against the Philadelphia Eagles, which got everyone in New York hyped up, not just Jets fans, but Giants fans as well. I just kind of want to talk to you about, obviously we all watched the game, but from your perspective of what this big key to victory was for the New York Jets, was it just simply amazing defensive, display, or were there any things that, as a Giants fan looking in from the outside that you're like, oh, wow, like this guy who's kind of been underrated for this team, now everyone's able to watch him kind of click into the system that we might have not noticed?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in that game was just creating turnovers, which is something this Jets defense, they were great last year, but an area where they could have improved was the turnover department. And they've been able to do it pretty well against Josh Allen in week 1, Patrick Mahomes in week 4, and then again against Jalen Hurts right before the bye week. I think that really played a big factor in it. And honestly, a lot of it has to do with the pressure that the Jets get on the quarterback. They force these quarterbacks into mistakes, and they have the secondary in order to make the plays. But I'm going to go back to the defensive line. I think with the speed off the edge with Bryce Huff and Jermaine Johnson, a second-year player, is really starting to come along now the last few weeks. And we know about the guys on the interior. They're just a really deep unit, and I think the pressure that they establish on opposing quarterbacks kind of forces them into mistakes. And on the offense, it's kind of like, just don't make a mistake. And they didn't score a ton. They had to settle for a lot of field goals, which is frustrating, but the defense was just so lights out that it didn't matter.
This isn't really related, I guess, to this game specifically, but more long-term outlook for the Jets. We've seen teams that, even the Jets in recent years have been a prime example of this, that you have a really, really strong defense and that can win you, a string of games, right? But when it comes down to it, week by week, every week, consistency, your defense can't always step up to that level that they can win you football games consistently. How do you think the Jets deal with that this year? Like, is Zach Wilson going to be able, to operate well enough that the Jets can actually make some sort of run? Are you just hoping that Aaron Rodgers makes a miracle return? Like, what's your outlook on that? Because, I've seen a lot of different perspectives from Jets fans on Twitter about this.
Yeah, that's a totally fair question and point to bring up, because, you're right. Like, you can't be the last 2 weeks, they're 1 for 9 in the red zone and getting and converting on touchdowns, which isn't good enough. And it's probably not, sustainable to continue to play at that level. But like, comparing just last year to this year, Zach Wilson is much better in a lot of key categories. And I'm not saying like he's the savior, he's the future of the franchise, but he went from someone who was legitimately unplayable last year to, like, I don't know, maybe the 24th best quarterback in the league, which is a massive, massive step forward for him, as sad as that might be. His turnover-worthy plays are way, way down while under pressure this year. He was dead last in turnover-worthy play percentage last year while facing pressure. He was dead last in adjusted completion percentage while facing pressure. And this year he's top 10 in both. And, that's not, again, saying that he's a top 10 quarterback, but it seems like he's able to handle the rush a little bit better and avoid that back-breaking mistake. There are going to be games where he's going to have to air it out and throw it a little bit more. And I don't think that's, the long-term, successful plan. The Jets want to play defense and run the ball, but I think Zach showed in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs that he can hold his own when he has to throw a little bit. So I think there is hope that this year will be a little bit different with him as compared to his first 2 years in the league.
I want to get serious for a second because I was joking about the Aaron Rodgers thing earlier, and I know you've talked about it in your YouTube videos and on the podcast before, but I do want to say, like, with all the shenanigans that guy brings to the team, when the Jets brought him in and stuff like that, with the, the chambers and the darkness, and now the superhuman scientist type of recovery here, getting his training done, going on the Pat McAfee show with the Pfizer, Travis Kelce digs, all of that stuff combined. Still to you, as him being your franchise quarterback for at least the near future, we're hoping for the next couple of years, however long he can still sling it and do it successfully. We'll see what happens coming off the injury. Just bringing all of that in, what was your mindset during the off season, coming in with all of the stuff and now still, like, do you defend with your life Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think something that I've been really impressed with him, and I wasn't necessarily expecting this, because everything that you heard coming out of Green Bay was he's kind of a loner. He doesn't like assimilate himself with the team or the young guys. And ever since he's come in, he's really done a good job of, taking some of the young guys under his wing. And, the obvious one is Zach Wilson, right, in the quarterback room. Everyone's going to point to that one. But he has a really good relationship with Mekhi Becton, the offensive lineman, and, Sauce Gardner on the defensive side of the ball. And, for me, I think it, speaks volumes to him wanting to get back to play with this team. And he talks about how much he misses the guys, when he's, out recovering, and he still talks on the phone with Zach every day. He's zooming into meetings and, all this stuff. And I really do think the players look up to him and respect him a lot. Like, his presence there, I think, has had a positive impact, not just on Zach Wilson, but on the team itself. I've been impressed with his, leadership abilities, because, like I said, that was kind of something that a lot of people questioned in Green Bay. But I think there's, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he's a little bit motivated to prove people wrong. And I'm all about that. I like it.
All right, to wrap things up here, you mentioned a couple of these injuries, DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner. What are, like, besides those guys, what are are there anybody, like, Friday, whatever it is, Friday, 4 p.m., when that injury report comes out, who are you going to be keeping an eye on for the Jets?
Yeah, so Joe Tippmann's another big one. He's the rookie. He was drafted as a center, but's been playing right guard and playing really well. He got hurt in that Eagles game, and initially when Robert Saleh spoke after the game, it sounded like it was going to be something that was long-term. But earlier in the week, he seemed optimistic that, maybe it's not going to be something where he's missing time. He hasn't practiced yet this week, so I personally would be surprised if he played in this game against the Giants, which would mean that Wes Schweitzer would get the start at right guard. And to me, that's a massive difference, going from Joe Tippmann, who's been really, really solid in both pass pro and run blocking, on an offensive line where you already lost Elijah Vera Tucker for the season. So I'm definitely keeping a close eye on that and seeing what his status is for Sunday.
Joe Tippmann, so funny. Like, someone also the Giants were looking to draft as well. At Matt O'Leary NY on Twitter, YouTube, Jets podcast, Up the Turnpike for the Islanders. We thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully when this episode gets released tomorrow, it's after an Isles win tonight. So thanks so much, Matt. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again, guys, for having me on. Really appreciate it.